The American Gold Eagle is supposed to be the cleanest hard money on Earth. Stamped by the United States Mint, sold under a federal law that has mandated American mine sourcing since 1985, and bought by hundreds of thousands of retail investors who paid a premium specifically for that institutional guarantee. But now, a New York Times investigation published on the 26th of April has just blown that promise apart in the most damaging way. Reporters spent roughly 2 years tracing physical gold from cartel-controlled mines in Colombia through Texas refineries and into the very coins now sitting in American safes, deposit boxes, and IRA custodian vaults across the country. The Treasury's own Inspector General had already flagged the problem back in 2024, warning that the Mint cannot ensure most of its gold coins comply with the very law it has operated under for 4 decades. And so today, we look at exactly what the Times documented inside the cartel-controlled mining pits of Colombia, why the entire LBMA certification system was incapable of catching what was happening, and what this all means for every retail buyer who's been relying on an institutional brand as a guarantee for what they actually own. My name is Guy, and this is Coin Bureau Finance. The story of how cartel gold ended up wearing a bald eagle begins with a law that was supposed to prevent exactly this outcome. The Gold Bullion Coin Act of 1985 explicitly mandated that every American eagle and every American buffalo coin be struck from newly mined domestic gold. Congress passed it specifically to stop the United States from financing human rights abuses through its bullion programs, with apartheid-era South African exports being the original political concern that drove the legislation. The Mint's marketing has leaned on that promise ever since, with bald eagles, founding principles language, and a price premium that retail buyers happily paid because they trusted the seal of the federal government to mean what it appeared to mean. However, sitting underneath the legal mandate is the global supply chain itself, and this is where the entire trouble actually begins. You see, raw gold leaves a mine, gets melted into bars by local intermediaries who issue the origin paperwork, gets exported to a refiner that purifies it to internationally recognized standards, and from there it flows out to bullion banks, ETF custodians, central banks, and national mints around the world. Every link in that chain depends entirely on the link before it for honest documentation, and nobody in the chain independently verifies the original mine. The certification system was built for industrial throughput, not forensic provenance, and that single distinction is the important loophole here. Now, the institution at the top of refiner certification is the London Bullion Market Association, whose good delivery list is treated globally as the gold standard for refiner trust. The US Mint sources from refiners on that list, central banks hold their reserves in good delivery bars, and every major ETF backs its allocated holdings the same way. What the LBMA actually certifies, however, is refiner practices, financial standing, anti-money laundering policies, and product quality. What it does not certify is the geographic origin of the input metal arriving at the refinery gate. Refiners self-report their sources, and the system relies on refiner integrity rather than independent audit at the mine level itself. So, in plain English, the certification verifies the factory, not the field. Okay, now let's look at the substance of what the Times actually documented. Lead reporter Justin Sheck and his colleagues spent close to 2 years tracing physical gold from a 2,000-hectare illegal mining site called La Mandinga, located near Caucasia in Colombia's Bajo Cauca region. The mine has been controlled for roughly 8 years by the Clan de Golfo, designated by the US Treasury as a foreign terrorist organization and described by the investigation as Colombia's largest drug cartel. Now, the cartel does not operate the mining directly itself, though. Instead, it taxes the miners working the site at approximately $400 per month per team, and it controls the storefronts in town that buy the raw gold from those miners and melt it into export-ready bars. From there, the laundering process becomes almost mechanical in nature. Colombian intermediaries issue paperwork through the country's small-scale mining registration program, granting illicit metal a paper identity as legitimate artisanal output. The gold is then exported with valid-looking documentation to Texas, where Dylan Gage receives it, and to Salt Lake City, where Asahi USA does the same. Both refiners then commingle the imported metal with domestic supply, and once that batch passes through the furnace, the industry treats the resulting product as American gold. Dylan Gage's refining chief, Paul Healy, put it on the record in his own words. "It is commingled," he said, "and it comes out the other side." Export records cited in the investigation show roughly $255 million worth of gold bars from the implicated Colombian supply chain arriving at the Texas refinery over the preceding 12 months alone. For context, the United States imported around $1.5 billion of Colombian gold in 2024 out of a national export total north of $4 billion. Colombia's own Comptroller General estimated back in 2022 that approximately 85% of the country's gold exports were illegally sourced at the mine level. And here is the genuinely uncomfortable part for anyone still treating this as a fringe problem. Illegal gold mining has now overtaken cocaine as the single most profitable activity for Colombian organized crime networks. The 2026 American Buffalo, the coin specifically marketed for the United States' 250th anniversary, was struck from metal flowing through exactly this supply chain. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has now opened a formal review of mint procurement practices, citing the need to safeguard national security and uphold market integrity. The mint itself, meanwhile, having previously claimed its gold came entirely from the United States, as the law requires, has revised its language to describe the country as its primary source. Translation: the institutional brand that buyers paid a premium for has just been repriced by the institution that issues it. And now, if you want to make sense of macro stories like this one without drowning in noise, then you should be signing up for the Coin Bureau Finance weekly newsletter. It's absolutely free, and we break down everything regarding global finance, geopolitics, and markets so you don't miss what actually matters. All you have to do is click the link in the description below or scan the QR code on your screen. And now, back to the gold. So, if the United States Mint, the most credentialed buyer of physical gold in the world, could not catch any of this, then the obvious next question is how the certification system was supposed to work in the first place. The Mint was buying from refiners on the LBMA Good Delivery List. Those refiners had passed annual third-party audits aligned with OECD due diligence guidance for conflict-affected and high-risk areas. They'd implemented anti-money laundering programs, know your customer procedures, and the documented risk flagging policies the standard explicitly requires. Every box, on paper, was ticked, and the cartel gold still arrived at the foundry door. Well, for one thing, this has happened before. Back in 2018, Miami-based NTR Metals, a subsidiary of Dallas refiner Elemetal, pleaded guilty to anti-money laundering violations after importing more than $3.6 billion of Latin American gold between 2012 and 2015, much of it linked to illegal Peruvian mining and organized crime. NTR Metals was on the LBMA Good Delivery List at the time of the offences. The certification did not catch the scheme, however. Dubai-based Kaloti Precious Metals was separately documented importing 57 tons of Sudanese gold in a single year, an amount that vastly exceeded Sudan's officially declared national production. Swiss giant Valcambi had its membership of the Swiss Better Gold Association suspended for 6 months in 2025 over similar sourcing concerns. Inside the United States Mint specifically, this pattern of failure even has a name. It's called the offset policy, and former Mint director Donna Pope introduced it decades ago. The mechanism allowed refiners to deliver foreign gold to the mint, provided they certified they had purchased an equivalent amount of American mined metal elsewhere during the year. Now, the 1985 statute authorized no such workaround anywhere in its text. The Treasury's Office of Inspector General audited the practice in its semi-annual report covering April through September 2024 and concluded in writing that the mint cannot ensure most gold coins produced are minted from newly mined US gold in compliance with the Gold Bullion Coin Act. 4 of the mint suppliers were flagged as high risk in a separate compliance assessment by early 2025. The Mint's actual due diligence, according to the OIG findings, consisted in significant part of checking whether refiners had ethical sourcing policies posted on their corporate websites. That is a screensaver passing for a security system, not oversight of any meaningful standard. Which brings us to the part of this story that extends far beyond the mint itself, because the certification gap that just exposed American Eagle buyers is identical to the one underpinning every other major gold position on the planet. Central banks holding their official reserves in good delivery bars rely on the same refiners and the same audit framework. The largest gold ETFs, GLD, IAU, and SGOL, all currently trading approximately 17% off their 52-week highs after gold's blistering 42% one-year run to roughly $4,600 an ounce, are backed by metal certified through the very same architecture. Wealthy private buyers depositing kilo bars in vaulted storage are buying into the same trust assumption. A WWF UK report cited across this debate found that more than 80% of US financial institutions face exposure to illegal gold mining through their dealings. And the current price environment is making the problem worse rather than better. With the metal trading above the $4,500 mark and Dubai-rooted African gold flows now valued in the hundreds of billions over the past decade, the financial incentive to launder illicit material into the formal supply chain has never been larger in modern history. Switzerland alone imported 316 tons of gold from the UAE in just the first 9 months of 2025, more than double its typical annual volume through that particular corridor. And this is also where the comparison nobody on the gold side wants to see suddenly becomes unavoidable. Bitcoin's underperformance over the past 12 months, down 18.8% to roughly $78,000, while gold ran in the opposite direction, is the obvious counterargument and should be acknowledged on its own terms. But the point still stands regardless of recent price action. Every Bitcoin in existence carries its full transaction history permanently and publicly recorded on a ledger that any user can verify with no permission and no intermediary required. The chain of custody back to the original transaction that mined a given unit into existence is auditable by anyone running a node anywhere on Earth. Gold's physical melting destroys exactly that history at the refinery gate, by design and by physics. Now, Bitcoin has its own provenance complications, including OFAC-sanctioned addresses, flows out of North Korea, and the tainted UTXO question that has produced a de facto two-tier exchange treatment of certain coins. But those are problems created by the visibility of the ledger, not the absence of it. Gold's problem is created by the invisibility of the chain itself. You cannot run a full node on a melted bar. So, the takeaway here is harder and more honest than the marketing has ever allowed. The era of trusting the institutional stamp as a proxy for supply chain integrity is over. The era of treating LBMA good delivery certification as a guarantee of geographic origin is over. And the era of assuming that the United States Mint or the Royal Canadian Mint or any national bullion authority can tell you with certainty where every ounce of metal in your coin actually came from is over too. What replaces all of that is a framework the industry itself is finally being forced to build, with mandatory country of origin reporting for all 66 LBMA refiners coming in 2027, voluntary digital passports rolling out throughout 2026, and molecular marking pilots that may eventually allow physical verification at the assay table itself. None of that infrastructure is in place yet, though, and none of it retroactively covers the gold already sitting in your safe. For retail buyers and institutional holders alike, the lesson is clear. The brand stamped on the product is not the same thing as the supply chain that produced it. But perhaps the bigger question this raises is whether the opacity exposed by this investigation actually changes how you want to hold your hard money exposure going forward. Does the cartel gold revelation move the needle on how much you trust the LBMA stamp on a kilo bar? Or does it change the calculation on physical bullion versus verifiable digital alternatives, even with Bitcoin underperforming this badly over the past year? Feel free to get highly opinionated in the comments section below, and if you want to understand how the broader macro environment is reshaping the case for gold, Bitcoin, and every other monetary asset competing for capital right now, then you can check out our video on that right over here. That's all from me for today though, so as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon. This is Guy, signing off.